Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome back. It's Saturday morning, Multifamily Unplugged, your number one Saturday morning radio show, where we talk about multifamily and anything else that gets in the way of our conversation in the morning. You know us, we'll wind up in some rabbit hole and try and figure out how to get out. Hey, I am joined this morning by my co-host, Moose. What's up, Moose?
How are you, Mike? Good to see you.
I'm great. Good to be here. Good to see you. Hey, we have a great guest today. I am so excited. Courtney Fricke, and we are going to definitely talk about mobile homes and non-for-profits. Hey, Courtney, why don't you say hi real quick to everybody?
Hey, everyone. Happy to be here this morning and looking forward to this good conversation.
Good for you to be here. Hey, just a little housekeeping before we get going. Go wake somebody up. If you guys know somebody who needs to hear this message this morning or somebody needs to be here, go stick a cup of coffee in their hand and get them up. We are live on Facebook and live on Zoom this morning. So either platform you can get the full report this morning. Hey, I want to just encourage everybody, please like us on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you follow us, please make sure that you are following us on social media personally, as well as My Core Intentions, because that's where you'll find this feed for Multifamily Unplugged. And that is Multifamily Unplugged this morning. Hey, Courtney, good to see you. Glad that you're here. Why don't you do this? Why don't we get started and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure thing. So Courtney Fricke here, you guys. I'm based out of the New Orleans area. And so for a lot of you guys, I'm an active real estate investor. And my heart in getting into real estate was wealth building, right? Just like everyone else. So I started off flipping. And my very first property was a live-in flip. And I started doing some more flipping. And then I started adding some wholesaling because I needed to replace my income. I had left my job at that point to do real estate full time. So I'm looking for all that active income, which is great, right? Flipping, wholesaling, that's fun, but it wasn't going to build my wealth, right? You can't build your wealth with your income. You've got to build it with assets and cash flow. So one of the things that I started doing is I started learning more of the creative methods to buy real estate because all my money was tied up in those flips, right? I was limited. So learning how to do some of the creative ways of doing real estate. So that's more so the owner financing and things like that. It allowed me to go ahead and start buying single family rentals. It also opened me up to things like the wholesaling part opened me up to different asset classes, right? And so I got introduced to things like mobile homes and things along those lines and started doing a different variance of deals. And with the income part, right, needing the money to be able to buy these deals so I can then have that passive income because I was starting to get, loving the idea of cash flow, really wanting to focus on that. Yes, still doing the active stuff, still flipping, still wholesaling, but I really want to start chipping away at the cash flow. That's when I started to learn how to raise private money. And these are everyday individuals who are wanting to back the deals that I find because they want their money to go to work for them, right? It's better than it sitting in the bank or, in a CD or something like that. So that is when I started getting into the commercial realm and started getting into some of these deals like mobile home parks and things like that. So those are kind of the things, a little bit of my background. I did work for an apartment complex corporation. That was my last job, my last W-2 job. And I managed their marina. And it's 105 unit marina. And while I was there for 4 years, I turned that asset around and got it prepared to sell. And my salary was barely a trickle, on the upside. And so I realized that I had some skill sets there. I knew how to turn a failing operation into one that was succeeding. I took it from 40% occupied to 100% occupied. Took it from 1-star reviews to 5-star reviews across all platforms, and did about 7 proposals of value add situations on that deal, to the point that the president of the corporation flew out to say, who is this new employee down in Louisiana? But at the same time, I realized I was making them rich. So I made sure to learn some skill sets while there And then I have now taken it on to working for myself and acquiring the assets that I have. So that's just a little bit about me.
And you certainly have a track record. There's no doubt about that. And I think that it comes from a mindset of just being creative, right? And I like what you said about creative financing. And talk about that a little bit. Do you have a creative deal that you did that really sticks out to you over the years that you kind of go, man, how did I ever put that together?
Sure. So I've got one that I'm doing right now that I absolutely love. And all that it is, I truly believe that when it comes to real estate, you're only good as your education, right? Jim Rohn says that you can't out earn your self-development. So I took a lot of time and effort into, learning different things. And so whenever I hit the hurdle of money, which is most people's objection, I don't have the money to go invest in real estate. Well, sure. So, I didn't either. But what I did is I went and found how to use what's called other people's money. And one of the most like the easiest ways is using the seller's money, right? That they're going to get from the deal or the underlying financing on the deal. I'll say this, I have a deal right now that I took it a step further, and I actually used the liens on the property as a means for me to get into the deal. So I bought a house with 1.4 million in liens against it. It's it was a 16-year-old house that was vacant for 11 years. And I mean, that place was it had been sitting there. And so it had a small jungle outside, but it was beautiful in a highly desirable area. So the owner allowed me to take that over for $0 out of my pocket, other than paying for the attorney to quit claim it over to me. And it took me 2 years to work through all of those liens. But right now we're finally starting to do the renovations on it. And my acquisitions price, so how much it cost me to work through all of those liens. And I took the 1.4 million in liens. This house fixed up is worth 375. Everyone would have said, hey, I'm not interested in this house, right? And they would have said, nope, you can't do anything with that. That house is way underwater. And but I use some skill sets, right? Things that I've taken the time to go and learn. And I worked through negotiating those liens and things like that to where I only have $34,000 into this property. And we're going to start the renovations, and the renovations aren't going to cost more than $115,000. So it puts me in around 150, and this house currently will appraise for 375. And so I've used things like owner financing. I've used things like the subject to method of taking over people's mortgages. But this one, I used all of those liens almost as a financing tool to be able to get into the property. And then I went in and I worked through and negotiated all of those liens.
That's amazing. So I just want to backtrack for a minute. Did you buy the property with the liens on there?
I did.
And now you obviously, how did you do that? Because how would a title company allow you to close taking it, or did they insure over the liens? What happened there?
So I did what was called typically it's called a cash for a deed, but I didn't give the owner any cash. I told him, I said, look, I've got Mount Everest to climb. But what I did was I did exchange something of value. So the quitclaim deed said $10 in considerable goods, right?
Right.
The considerable goods was that if someone went on that property and broke their leg, who would they sue? Him, right? Because his name was on title. But for 11 years, he had washed his hands of this property, right? And so he actually didn't believe he still owned it. And so I sent him to his attorney with 3 specific questions. And then when he called me back, he said, my goodness, I still own it. And so for him, it didn't make sense for him to go insure himself, right, against this property that, spent good money toward a bad situation. So my biggest thing was, hey, the liability factor was the value exchange that I gave him. I was taking this liability off of his, his back. But the title company, all I did was get a quitclaim deed. So no title insurance or anything like that. So I did a quitclaim deed, and I actually put it into a trust because I knew it was going to take me some time to work through all of that. And so this is one of those ones where I've worked with multiple attorneys on it and have worked through a lot of things. Now that we're finally ready, we're actually I'm going to go put it into a new LLC and put title insurance on it. And I'm going to get some long-term financing, fixed financing on it. And I'm going to keep it as a rental in my portfolio.
Yeah, good for you. Boy, that's amazing. How'd you find that? How did you find that deal?
By opening my mouth. Well, technically on Facebook, it's more typing, right? So in those buy, sell, trade page groups, right? I've bought multiple properties off of social media, Craigslist, things like that. What I do is I have a core message, which is, that I solve real estate problems, that I'm the local property buyer, I'm the local real estate solution, that it's no pressure. I'm the gal down the street. I like to give people multiple options. And so I use that message in multiple facets of my interactions with the public. So there's an indoor mall in my city that, as you guys know, indoor malls are like basically going belly up, right? So this one's like so it's like abandoned. There might be one or two stores left open in it, more so the anchors. But anyway, they were in the news publicly for trying to fight property taxes, and they were behind, and just so everyone that gets posted in one of the buy sell trade pages on Facebook in my area, and everyone's like, I wish someone would come do this with it. You know how I'm talking about. Like they're just moaning and crying, right?
Yep.
So I go in there as a human being, not as a transaction, right? I don't go in there and say I buy properties cash fast. No, I went in there and said, you know what? I was born and raised here. This frustrates me too, because I'm sure it's bringing down the property values of the homes in the area. And you know what? For all of you who are, wanting an investor to come in, look, I'm an investor. I don't necessarily deal in these types of properties, but man, if this was a house in a neighborhood that was abandoned, I'd be fighting tooth and nail to try to find a way to bring a solution, not only to the homeowner, but to the neighbors. And then, I had some back and forth interaction with some people on there. I didn't just go in there and say, hey, here's my company, this is what I do, right? I just was a human interacting. And then probably about the third post, I said, you know what, guys, if you happen to know of anything in your area that's like this, I actually do. Not only am I interested in trying to work them, but if I successfully buy them, I will actually put some money in your pocket for the effort. And sure enough, someone jumped in my DM. It was near her mom's house.
Well, it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, it's just funny. I always talk about a couple things, go through the numbers, right? The more people you talk to, the more results you get. And I really like what you said. I'm a local real estate solution, right? Mm-hmm. Because what we do is if we can find the seller's problem, and I tell agents this all the time, if you can find the seller's problem, solve the seller's problem. It's the same thing if you're an investor buying residential or buying multifamily, whatever asset class you're in, the seller's selling because they have a problem. And, sometimes it's worse than others, but if you can solve that problem for the seller, you can get a decent real estate deal.
Hey, well, Mike, I think that I'm a value add investor from single family to the commercial realm. And it only makes sense when there's a problem, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's such a true statement. Hey, so can you talk about the wholesale business? I know that you started out in the wholesale business. Mm-hmm. What is that world like? What is that whole realm like? And, how do you go about doing that business?
Sure. So that's a business that, first of all, let's be very clear. It is a business, right? I do run a real estate investors association down in the New Orleans area, which is an educational and networking meetup. So I have had the privilege of seeing a few thousand people come through those doors over the years, and real estate professional, real estate investors in all phases of their journeys, right? And so many people are wanting to wholesale because they see the quick cash that it can provide. But what I find is that so many people, number one, they don't set out with the right expectations, which is, if you're going to put out the efforts and treat it like a hobby, then it's going to pay you like a hobby. You might get 1 or 2 deals a year. But if you put out efforts that are equal to business efforts, then you can actually build a business with it. So what I mean by that is that either you can do 100% of the work yourself, or you can actually start having some other people do the work for you. You can outsource it and build it up. So a few things like that. It is a two-person marketplace. What I mean by that is you've got the seller that you have to market to. So you have to find a distressed seller. And so whether that the property is distressed or the seller, is distressed due to, a divorce, bankruptcy, they're behind on their mortgage, whatever it is. So you've got to find that, which is like truly 5% of the population, right? It's not everyone. So I tell people all the time, when my staff, we market direct to seller. We still actively wholesale, but it's probably less than 20% of our business every year, because it's one of those things where I don't think I'm ever going to stop, because it's a good source of finding deals, right? So, and anytime a deal, when it doesn't fit our criteria, we wholesale it, because we know that we're not the market. Meaning, just because it doesn't fit my criteria for my portfolio, maybe someone else, will buy it. So you've got to market to these sellers. You can market to them 100 different ways. I don't care if you cold call them. I don't care if you send them mail, text them, door knock, do radio ads. I don't care what you do. You have to get in front of them, and you have to get in front of them consistently. And then the second part is you've got to find buyers, because what wholesaling is you're getting a property under contract at a discount, and then you're having an end buyer who buys out your position in that contract, and then you make the fee for buying you out, right? My very first wholesale deal, I made $7,500. And so I was like, woohoo, this is exciting, proof of concept. And then I've set out to making, a company out of it, where, we have consistent marketing happening. We have consistent follow-up happening, right? Like majority of our deals are when we follow up with people, not necessarily in the first, conversation with them.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? Because that's where I always talk about that, is that's where the money is. The money's in the follow-up. It's not in that first call. And the more times that you reach out to that same individual, whether you're trying to get a listing, whether you're trying to buy a wholesale deal, whether you're trying to buy a investment property, it makes all the sense in the world. Hey, what?
Can I jump in real quick, Courtney?
Yeah,
you reminded
please.
me. I was just, for a lot of people that don't really understand wholesaling, my sister is a firefighter. She retired. She owns about 5 homes in Cleveland. And I was just back there, and we were sitting there having a cup of coffee, and she's telling me about her friend whose parents passed away and left them their house, right? And this guy, he doesn't want to own the house anymore. And she's like, I'd really love to buy this house and fix it up and put the money in. She said, but I'm at, I just don't have the resources and the time to do it right now. And I said, well, why don't you wholesale? And she said, what do you mean wholesale? And I was like, find somebody that wants a project and sell it, wholesale it. So I went through the process of explaining it to her, and her eyes are like getting big. She's like, I can do that? I'm like, yeah. I said, what does the guy want for the property? She said, he wants like 100,000. And I said, what do you think it's worth? She said, if someone fixed it up, it'd be worth like 350. I was like, well, find a developer, or find a contractor that you can turn around and sell it for $120 or, 125,000, whatever, make 25 grand. She got all excited. She's like, oh man, that's a great idea. So,
it's huge. It's knowing those opportunities.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, she's, like you said, she's out there, people know her. She's in the community, and people know that she owns a few houses, and she's got a whole network of contractors. So, for her, I don't know if she'll ever turn it into a business, but what I'm saying is that, for people that are out there listening, wholesaling is a great option. And, we did one of my biggest deals was a wholesale deal, where I found a good property. I put it under contract, which meant I control it. And then it ended up, we couldn't get the financing, but we said, well, let's just flip it to somebody else. So it's definitely a strategy in the real estate for sure.
Yeah. And I don't think, Carl, I don't think I'll ever stop wholesaling, because I want to always, number one, when you can source the deal, you said it, you can control it, right? But if you don't want to go source your own deals, understand there's going to be someone else you're going to pay to do that. It's either a real estate agent or a wholesaler, bird dog, whatever you want to call it, right? And so for me, we like to source them ourselves. And then I like to be a transaction engineer where I can make money with anything that comes across my desk. I can wholesale it, I can keep it as a rental, I can flip it, I can develop it, I can do whatever.
Yeah, and you put it under contract, you control it. I mean, I remember one time with my partners, we had like 6 deals that we had under contract, and we couldn't execute on all 6 of them. We can only take down 4 of them. So we flipped the other 2, because why let a good deal pass your desk without you having some action on it? You know what I mean? So
Hey, Courtney, so how do we go from wholesale creative financing into mobile homes? What gets us into the mobile home business?
Yeah. So one of the beautiful parts about wholesaling is you get to see a lot of different deals happen in front of you. And it really helped me start to build out my criteria of what I wanted. Right. So I started off flipping and got into wholesaling. I learned really quickly that I don't really care for major renovations. Right. I don't like the lack of control of the subs and things like that. So I was looking to build out my criteria so I could to start to build out my portfolio, both on the single family and the commercial side. And so one thing I saw was that mobile homes, you had an excellent return on your investment because it wasn't necessarily a lot of money out of pocket, and the renovations could cost less, but you could still get a decent rent for them. And then one of the things I saw is I'm notoriously conservative, and the idea here was I like buying and dealing in that realm rental wise, and whenever I flip, that there's a ton of like a buyer pool, and the renter pool is higher. So I like the affordable realm. Doesn't necessarily have to be Section 8 affordable, just not top of the line, A-class neighborhoods or whatever, because you have more people who need that. And so that was something I was starting to see as I would wholesale mobile homes to people. I started realizing that, man, they're getting great returns, and man, they've got waiting lists for people to rent their trailers. So started getting into some of those, and then started to say, hey, what if I had them all in one spot? So started looking for mobile home parks, which, similar to multifamily, can be hard to find inventory wise, because either the sellers think they're like gold and they're asking for an arm and a leg for them, or one of the big things with it is we wanted to make sure the infrastructure was good. There's a few that we came across that we almost pulled the trigger on early on, but their infrastructure was going to cost a significant amount of money just to fix their infrastructure as far as the sewer and the water situation.
So when you're buying a mobile home park, is the financing easier? Is it more difficult on it? And then what about due diligence? I would imagine that the due diligence that you're doing on a mobile home park is probably equal to what we would do on a multifamily, if not even a little bit more, based on the type of product class.
Yeah, so you're right. It is similar, just a little bit more in some factors. So, for example, we've got one that we're closing on next Friday. It's a 30 unit. There's 27 lots and 3 single family homes with it. So yes, you do have to, let me say this. The only bank products I've ever used has been lines of credit. I personally have not gone and gotten loans or anything like that. I have used private money lenders, and creative financing are my 2 biggest ways to fund deals right now. But I've done my due diligence on the financing. Community banks are interested. My understanding is they do not like it when there's park owned trailers. They like it more when it's just the lots that you're renting out versus you actually own the trailers too and are renting those out.
Yeah.
So because the one that we're buying right now, we were trying to build out a plan to potentially, because we've got a 10-year balloon on the private money loan. So we're like, okay, do we want to secure, long-term financing with a community bank or something? Because my business partner uses bank loans. So I'm like, look, I'm not an old dog you can't teach new tricks to. Like, I'm open to it, but it's so I will say that. The other thing is that as far as due diligence goes, trailers in general, if they're not tied to the land, it's same as buying a car. You've got to go as far as the title and things like that. So for example, if someone had a mobile home right now on their land and I had to move it to my mobile home park, like I was just buying it, hiring someone to move it, and I was going to set up my mobile home park, I wouldn't go through a title company or an attorney. I would go through like a notary with a bill of sale.
Huh.
And I might even, in some places, I might even have to go through like the DMV. So just because it's more, again, treat it more like a car and as a depreciating asset rather than something that's tied to, real property.
Hey, how about this? Is it easier? Could you go buy a plot of land? Could you go buy 10 acres and build out your own mobile home park today? Or are the regulations in the cities and counties so high that they wouldn't let you do that?
Yeah, so we've explored that. We're finishing up a subdivision development right now, for actual homes and stuff like that. So on the development side, we've looked into that. Because we're value add investors, so far that has not made sense. It'd be a long time before we get the returns that we're used to seeing, because the majority of the money is going to be spent in the infrastructure, and developing in that way. What I will say is you're correct. The one that we're buying right now, that 30 unit, it's grandfathered in, and you can't, in that city, you can't build another mobile home park. I think there's a lot of prejudice against it, and mostly because I think they don't understand it or there's bad stigma. But yet it is one of the leading places where you can get affordable housing right now. But when people don't operate them well, it can kind of go similar to C to D class, multifamily. If you don't manage them well, it then becomes an eyesore, right? And so I think that's from the conversations we've had. I think there's some misconceptions, but so far those numbers haven't worked out for us. So we just like to go buy mismanaged ones or ones that need work or whatever, and then we go in and we buy them and then get them, singing after we turn them around.
It's so interesting. A guy I used to work with, he was an engineer years ago, and he and his wife bought a mobile home, and they got in for like $15,000 or something like that. And I'll never forget it because we kind of were like making fun of him a little bit. We're like, "Oh man, you live in a trailer." He's like, "Yeah." Then like a year later, he bought another one. And then like 2 years later, he ended up, over the course of like 4 years, he bought like 5 of these things. And it was a great investment for him. And you make that comment about misconception, but yeah, I mean, he did really well, and he got it. It was a low cost point of entry for him, right? He wasn't going to be able to go and buy a $50,000 or $60,000 home. He bought a trailer, I think it was for less than $15,000, and he built it up from there. And he ended up buying the whole park, at the end, a few years later. And I was like, well, that was actually pretty smart,
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Hey, let me just really quick just mention that we're live on Facebook this morning. We are live on Zoom. This is Multifamily Unplugged. We're joined by Courtney Fricke. And if anybody has any questions, thoughts, comments, please throw them in the chat, whether you're on Facebook or whether you're on Zoom. We'll try and get those questions answered for you here this morning. I want to just say hi to everybody that's here. Trevor and Prashant and Larry and Eddie and Mark. What's up, Mark? Hey, Courtney, thanks for being here. Listen,
Absolutely.
Let's shift gears a little bit. We're about 30 minutes into this already this morning, and I really would like to spend some time on what I know is close to your heart, and that's your nonprofit and giving back. So can you dig into that a little bit? Tell us what you're doing and what that looks like in your life for you.
Sure. So I didn't go to college. Instead, I lived in Texas for a few years, and I lived overseas for a year working for nonprofits. Some of them were faith-based. And a huge part of that has been, that was a huge part of my journey as far as, like, for example, when I lived in Thailand for a year, I worked with about 5 different nonprofits, doing everything from helping them fundraise, meaning fundraise for, actually we had a program with World Vision where we were fundraising for the breakfast for the for the children who were coming in from the hill tribes to go to school. They didn't have, most of them wouldn't eat. They didn't have the money to have breakfast, so we would fundraise the money so they could have breakfast provided for them. Everything from that, we did some trauma counseling for women who were coming out of sex trafficking and getting into like homes where they could get taught trades to get back into society as a means of earning a living. And one of my favorites was we had a university from, I forget which university it was. It was a smaller university, but they sent their professor and some of their MBA students from the business department. And they came out, and in Thailand, we traveled across the border into Laos, which Laos is a third world country. So in Thailand, there's a level there that we saw some things, but you go across the border, and it's like you go back 30 years. And so in Laos, what we did is we had those, the students, the MBA students, as well as the professor, and we taught to business owners in Laos. We taught them business classes so that they could become better business, owners and business leaders in their communities. And so now I did some translating for that, but it was very like getting a taxi, the food, the hotel. It was with the team, while one of my colleagues did the business seminar translating. And in my heart, like I loved seeing that. I actually did that. We did that twice. And so it was a huge part of, I loved seeing how we could take the entrepreneur side as well as the altruistic and the heart to give back, and we could marry the two, right, and empower other people. So as I've come back in the States, I moved back here in the end of 2013, got into the real estate industry in 2014. My heart has really been to rub shoulders with nonprofits and start to marry my heart for business and entrepreneurship and real estate, as well as with giving back, right? So I've been able to do a few things. My Real Estate Investors Association, we actually partner with Habitat for Humanity in our area. First of all, I have like the guy's card who goes and picks up the gently used items. Like they've got a box truck that they'll go and pick those up for their Habitat restore. We put those out at our table at the real estate events, right? Because anytime I'm flipping a property, I'm like, okay, this goes to the dump, but like, I can't tell you how many times I've bought a house that was fully furnished because the person went to jail or the parents passed away or, whatever the situation was. And so it's like, you've got a whole house full. So we'll call Habitat, we'll say, hey, can you come up and we'll donate the house of goods, right? And we encourage the investors in our area to do the same. Number one, it's so you're not just throwing all that stuff into the landfill, but so that you're also, it's a great way to give back to the community. I've worked a lot with Habitat, the president of the local Habitat, between orchestrating those builds where our investors and the real estate professionals in our community will go and help build some of these homes. I'm always telling investors, especially as they're wanting to get started, as a female, I couldn't just go and ask a contractor to teach me how to, do XYZ on a property, but with Habitat, I got to lay the roof. I got to do, literally, they were like, who's not afraid of heights? I was like, put me up there, bro, put me in, coach. Straight up, put me in with the harness up at the top of the roof. And we were laying the OSB and putting the roof down, right? So it was a fantastic firsthand experience. I'm always trying to help facilitate that for the investors in my RIA, as well as there's been opportunities I've been able to help Habitat get some land, and so that they can build on, and just various different things along those lines.
Hey, I've always had a heart for the homeless, right? I had a foundation for a number of years where we just gave back, where we really supported families that were in need like that. And do you see in today's world, and I think, Courtney, there's probably so many issues in the world today and things probably we don't even know about, but what do you see as probably the biggest need for support or help out there today from from a world of giving back and, if you were going to go start a nonprofit today, what do you see as one of the biggest issues, or even maybe even more than that? Because I think it's a really big question, right? I don't think it's just a concentrated little question. I think it's a big question, and because there are some issues out there. So what are your thoughts? I don't even know if I made any sense, right?
No. It does. I'll tell you this, I haven't started my own nonprofit because I wanted to do the research and development to understand what would be the best way that I can help. So right now I'm just supporting the ones in the area. And it's interesting because, for example, in the suburbs of New Orleans, Habitat will build new homes, but in the actual the actual city of New Orleans, they actually just have grants to go and help people remodel their old homes, right? So it kind of changes. Now, my first thought is something that's practical. People need something that's applicable, right? Something maybe affordable housing, something that deals with their level of income. But I'm a big proponent that the only difference between, someone who is maybe in a different place in life than myself is it's education. So it's that mindset piece and action. So I struggle because I could go give a lot of people fish who are hungry, but I know that I could better impact their life if I taught them how to fish. So that's where my struggle is, right? So there's a few nonprofits in the area that I've said, look, I will give my resources. Do you need an extra trainer, person to educate? Do you need someone to teach on financial literacy? Do you need someone to teach on, XYZ? Or I'm like, because it truly is some of those simple things. James Clear, the guy who wrote Atomic Habits, he wrote something where he said, so many people, they crave that intensity. Let me go run a marathon. Let me go, do this grand thing. Let me go travel to 12 countries on one trip. When in reality, some of us just really need consistency, meaning I'm just going to work out 5 days a week instead of run that one marathon, or I just need to do these little things over time. And a lot of times that's more powerful. So for me, I've got to look at what does that look like? And so what am I doing today, Mike? I'm trying to take every property I come across, and I'm trying to number one, treat sellers in a way where I give them their options. And I'm not trying to take the shirt off their back as an investor. I'm saying, look, here's your different options on what you can do with this property. I want you to make an informed decision for your family. This is how I can help. Here's some other options other than doing business with me. And then let me know. I'm happy to give you resources. And then when we buy properties, we're wanting to fix them up. We're wanting to provide a good roof over people's head that's affordable. And that's one of the things that we're doing right now to do the most good that we can with where we're at.
Yeah. It's when we look into the world, there's so many issues, right? I mean, you've got human trafficking, you've got kids that aren't eating, whether it's breakfast or any meal throughout the day. You've got people that are domestic abuse. You've got single moms and single dads trying to raise kids and, on their own. I just think, it becomes a point where it's like, man, what a mess.
Well, Mike, I'm buying a 45 unit motel right now. That's in the heart of downtown in the suburbs of New Orleans. And so we're in the middle of the due diligence on it. And this past Monday, we were out there. My business partner had all the contractors to do the inspections. And I was out there, I had my staff, and we were basically building out the property management plan on it, right? So I was out there looking at everything in the office and some other stuff. So the owner kept coming up to me and he said, look, I'm so stressed because all of the tenants obviously saw us there, right? And it's a motel, so it's got nightly, weekly, and monthly rates. And you could just see them all on their balconies just watching us, right? As we were going through the property. And he's like, Courtney, and they mismanaged it. Like, that property's been mismanaged. And he said, Courtney, I'm so like, what do I do? He said, because I have people who literally, he's like, I have some invalids in this, complex who their family dropped them off here on the monthly rate because it's cheaper than sending them to the nursing home. And he's like, what are we going to do with that? Right. He's like, I have some of the community Christian concern, some of the churches, I'm their go-to person to call for a nightly rate when they have a woman in a domestic abuse situation. And so I told him, I said, I pulled out my card. I pulled out my wallet. I gave him my card. I said, I told him, I said, Mr. Steve, I said, please call me. I want to still find a solution for those people. I can't guarantee it's going to be this property, but I'm going to work through my resources and find a way to help these people, give them options.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Hey, listen, there's a couple of questions. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Mark is asking, sounds like Courtney has done it from the ground up. Just curious, where does credit score have to be to do the deals that she does?
Okay, so I'm going to have a twofold response. The first one is, I mentioned that in the beginning, I used my own cash and I used lines of credit. So there was a play there with my actual credit when it came to that line of credit. But since then, I've used owner financing and private money. Even I've got a few multi-million-dollar deals right now where we're finding people. So it's going to be a more sophisticated play because, they have more liquidity. They obviously, we've got some CEOs who have liquidity in the bank who are lending on some of our deals. So we're going to have a little bit more, maybe a higher interest rate, things like that. So I'll say this. I have not, it's been since about 2016 since I've actually used any type of bank line of credit. But I will say that when it comes to doing some of these commercial deals, and Mike and Carl, I would propose that you guys could answer this as well. People are going to look at you and they're going to vet you as, how can you handle this deal? If you're the only person who is the only person doing the deal, they're going to look at you. They're going to look at your track record. They're going to look at your credit. They're going to look at your financial statement. I've had owners ask me when doing an owner finance deal in a large commercial deal, I had the owner ask me for my financial statement, right? Because he wanted to know. Any lender, I don't care if it's institution-wise, I don't care if it's private, I don't care if it's a seller, they want to know two things. What's my security and what's my return? And a huge part of that security part is, who is this person? And how do I know that this deal is going to do well? So there's been times, my credit score is good, but I don't use it on deals. But when I've had to do some of these bigger deals, I don't have the financial statement needed for some of these larger deals that I'm doing. So what have I done is I've partnered up to level up. We've been knocking on the door of a $10 million deal for 6 months now. And I can't do that on my own. And Lord knows that for the sake of these gray hairs, I am not trying to do it on my own because it's a bigger deal. But what I've done is I brought in other people who have been able to help whenever, if my financial statement was not sufficient or the liquidity needed for some of these deals was not sufficient. So I'm a big fan that you should be using other people's money, but you should have your house in order so that when people look at you, they then trust that you would be a good borrower.
That's a really good point because, a lot of people don't have, I used to be a banker and, nothing was more frustrating when somebody would come in and I'd have to school them or educate them about getting your personal financial statement together, getting your act together before you show up at the banker's door or before you try to take down a deal, because eventually that is going to come into play, and for people buying multifamily or commercial, the bankers do look at the individual, but they also look at the property, which is a little bit different than when you're buying a single family home where your credit score, they really are just looking at the person that's buying the home, their income, those ratios and everything else. But when you get creative, it becomes less about you and more about the deal and how it's structured.
Yeah, Mark, your comment is right about level up, partner up. So true, because a lot of times and I'm seeing this more and more today, even in the multifamily spaces, that people don't have the opportunity or don't have all the skills necessary or wherewithal necessary to do a deal on their own. So they're bringing partners in. They're bringing a key principal in. They're bringing equity in. They're bringing a balance sheet partner in. They're bringing people in to go on the loan, because, and I think this is indicative of where the market in the multifamily space has gone with the compression on cap rates and how high the pricing has gotten, as you know, as invariably. So, hey, you know, we're pretty much, guys, we're about 45 minutes in. So, you guys want to go a few more minutes? You want to stop? Where are we at?
Yeah, no, a couple more minutes. And before we forget, how can people get in touch with you? Courtney, do you have can you put your email or something in the chat?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll do that. So I've tried to start sharing more about the deals that I'm doing on my Instagram. So I put my Instagram in there, and then so like fun facts, yesterday I just posted about the mobile home park that I'm buying. I left a note on the door of the laundromat that was right next door to the park that had been shut down. And because I saw some movement, and just yesterday we locked up the laundromat for that mobile home park we're buying next Friday. Stoked about owning that.
Yeah, you know, that's so great. It's, you know, we used to, you know, you got to get creative, right? Well, you don't have to, but I mean, I would knock on doors. I would go to a neighborhood and I would go to the local hardware store and talk to the hardware owner, right? That was not the Home Depot, but the local, because they're the ones that are fixing the windows and fixing the doors, and they're selling the paint, and they know the property managers and the property owners. And I'd say, hey, listen, if you find somebody you know that wants to sell their building, let me know. This is what we're buying. I would go to the in Chicago. If you own a 6 flat or more, you have to have a private garbage company. So all the dumpsters in the alleys are painted different colors. So when the drivers come by, you know, one driver picks up all the blue ones, another one picks up all the yellow ones, another one picks up all the red ones, right? So I would network with those guys, because that's one of the first things that people would stop paying is their private garbage, right? So getting creative, you know, if you're in a neighborhood, knock on a few doors, say, you know, hey, like, I loved your Instagram, you know, you're the real estate solution person, right? You know, just do those creative things, because, you know, we found a number of deals that never hit the MLS. Nobody else looked at them because we were just aggressive. We were creative, and people would, you know, they might not call you the next day, but they may call you 6 months later and say, you know what, you know, you dropped by my house, you left a letter or something. We're looking at selling now, you know, because people's situation changes. So, you know, that's just a perfect example about getting creative, because that's where you're going to find the good deals. You know, going to the MLS and looking at every other deal that every other broker, every other investor's looked at, you're not going to find a deal, you know, but going to finding those pocket listings, or finding those motivated sellers, or finding those properties that might be, you know, not performing, where you can come in and make a difference. That's where you're going to find your deals.
Yeah, for sure.
So this is Prashant. I have a question here, folks. I know you guys are into real estate for a long, long time, it seems like, and I'm in real estate also, but not for that long, about 5 years. I do primarily multifamily syndication. What are your thoughts regarding finding the off-market deal in multifamily or in mobile home space or storage space? Yes, knocking on the door is okay, probably for single family, you know, where you can probably, if you knock on 15 doors, you know, you may find one deal, you know, if you see the condition of the property. How about apartment complexes? You know, how about mobile home parks? How do you guys have any thoughts on that? You know, how to look for deals in those spaces?
Sure, I can speak to Prashant. Thanks for asking that. I can speak to, you know, yes, it may seem like those things are only for single family, but actually the largest deal of my career I got by driving for dollars and then door knocking on the office and saying, hey, you know, what I did is I pulled up on there and I said, you know what? I saw that the tax assessor, that the owner's name was such and such. I knocked on the door. I said, hey, I've been looking for Mr. So-and-so. Is he around? Do you have a number for him? And I treated it like I wasn't some, you know, buttoned up. I wasn't like, hi, I'm calling to talk to you. So, you know, I knocked on the door. I was like, hey, I've been looking. hey, did Mr. So-and-so come by today? I've been trying to track him down. Is he? And they said, oh no, let me, hold on. They got on the phone with him for a large mobile home park. And the seller met me out there a little while later. Now he just happened, I realized he was local. And so I lucked out on that one, right? One of the other mobile home parks I'm buying right now, what I did was I opened my mouth and I told people what I do. And so I had someone who was a wholesaler who only was used to single families and residential. She got a call off her "We Buy Houses" sign that was this mobile home park owner. And he said, do you happen to, do y'all do anything with mobile home parks? And she said, I know who to call. Hold on. And she called, she said, I don't even know where to even begin, but I know you're the person I need to call. And we structured the deal, we negotiated it, and we're paying her still a fee because we, want to incentivize her to call us again, right? To think of us for the next deal. And so that's how we, those are the two deals, the two mobile home parks that we have right now going on. Is how we got them.
Yeah, I think the moral of that story is, get out there, tell people what you're looking for, tell people what you're up to, right? And that's where you're going to find those deals, and get creative. Part of getting creative is being creative. Think of a different way of approaching that other people aren't doing it, regardless of whether it's single family home or multifamily. For Chicago and in some areas where there's a density, you'll find blocks where there's nothing but apartment buildings. There's 6 flats and 8 flats and 10 flats. So, spend some time and just drive those neighborhoods, talk to people. In Chicago, if a building is 6 units or more, they have to have a management sign on the building for the firefighters and for the police officers, right? So, I used to take pictures of those and then give them to my assistant. She'd put them in a database and we would mail them. We would say, hey, and we know you own these properties in this area. If you're ever looking to sell, or if you ever find a deal that you're not interested in, give us a call. So, it's just, you have to think outside the box and be creative in how you approach it. But there's an infinite number of ways of doing that.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So I totally agree with both, both of you know what you are saying. I live in New York and I invest outside the state. That's my challenge, I have to rely on a lot of brokers or the local wholesalers. I want
to challenge that mindset, Prashant, because for example, there is a multifamily that I drive by every day that's in my favorite part of town. I went and found his information, and then I literally found him on Facebook and found that he was pitting the rooms up for rent. It was a 24-unit multifamily. He was pitting up the rooms for rent on Facebook Marketplace. So do you know what I did? I went on there and I responded, hey, I'm not really looking to rent this, but have you thought of selling it? And I was able to get on the phone with him. Well, the son of a gun told me he wanted 1.2, but then the next day he had it listed for 1.3 before he would even agree to send me any financials. So, he was already moving along the line to listing it, but the reality is I got in front of the seller.
Got it.
And so the only thing I'll say this is, if you go online and if there's a multifamily seller, motivated seller list that you can swipe your credit card and buy, I'm not going to say don't do that. I'm just going to say, if you can do it, everyone else can do it. I'm a fan of reaching out to people in different means. I'll go get not birthday cards, but like kind of like those type cards, and I'll send something. And people are like, oh, that doesn't work in commercial. I beg to differ.
By the way, it did work for me, actually. I bought my first 72 unit by those postcards.
Yeah, so there you go.
In Indianapolis, so I just wanted to pick your brain. What are the other things that you appreciate you sharing your thoughts, guys. Appreciate it very much.
Here's the other thing too. There are some other solutions out there. There's mapping solutions where you can, you find a neighborhood and all the sellers come up, all the seller information. There's county records, tax records. There are robust systems out there called, Carl, we were talking about one yesterday, Reomni, and
yes.
It's really expensive. However, there's people that will sell data off of them. So, we can look around, we can find that and source that. Hey, you guys, we are down to the wire here. Courtney, thanks for being here today. Any last closing thoughts?
Sure. Look, it's been an absolute pleasure, Mike and Carl. Thank you for having me. You know, guys, as I've talked about these things, I truly believe that the only difference between me and those who are listening, who are wanting to get started or anything along those lines, because in this realm of real estate, and maybe we can say business as well, is that people, they become hoarders of information. And look, I'm a self-development fiend myself. I love to read. I read 50 to 60 books a year, and I'm attending multiple conferences or seminars a year. But the reality is don't be a professional learner just in learning alone, right? Take action. So find one thing that I said today and say, hey, maybe I can go and do XYZ. Maybe I can just go volunteer for a habitat build so I can start, get my hands on the understanding some of the construction side, or maybe it is, going and driving around and taking down the addresses of some of these multifamilies or these mobile home parks in the area. Because the reality is it's honestly that the education part is key. It's huge. At the same time, I can teach you to fish, but you need to go fish as well. So that's what I'm gonna encourage you guys to do. Look, reach out. I'm happy to help anyone. I put my Instagram in there. That is something that I've been very conscious of posting about some of the day-to-day stuff that I do in real estate. And so, but again, thank you guys. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yep, thank you, Courtney.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And Moose, as usual, Saturday morning is always the best day of the week to spend with you. That's for sure.
Same to you, Mike.
What are you doing today, Carl?
Oh, I'm just gonna go hang out with my teenage kids, probably drive them around, be their chauffeur. That's what you do when you got teenagers.
Nice.
Oh, so living the life, Carl.
Yeah, exactly.
So Carl, would you
Exactly.
mind leaving your email address here if you don't mind? I just left my, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm talking to Carl.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Would you mind leaving your email address at least, sir?
yeah, I'm gonna put it in here right now.
Very good. And Courtney, I do a webinar once in 2-3 weeks, and I have a bunch of people, who come on board. I would like to invite you in that, if that's okay with you, Thursday night, maybe sometime in June or July timeframe, if that's okay.
I'd be happy to go ahead and reach out to me. We could take the conversation offline here.
Very
Yeah,
good.
He does a really nice job, Courtney. Prashant does a very nice job with that whole
Thank you.
program he has. So,
Yeah.
all right, everybody. Hey, thanks
Carl, I'll reach
again.
out to you too.
Saturday morning. Glad everybody was here. Good to see you, Courtney. Let's stay in touch. And
Sure thing.
we will talk to everybody soon.
Bye, everyone.
See you guys.
Bye, guys.